honestly felt sorry for them because they were living a great life, but I was living a love. I was living a passion.
I love your life, Vera, because there are eras of Vera Wang. And before there was the person I grew up knowing, I didn't even realize this, and I don't think many people do. You were a figure skater.
I was a
How did
figure
you get into figure
skater.
skating?
My father, this sounds very, very cliche, but he bought me a pair of ice skates from a toy shop for Christmas. And he took me to the pond at 72nd Street in Central Park, which froze over, used to freeze over. And he had skated in China. Believe it or not, my father had figure skated in China when he was in the army. Is that insane? And he sort of bought me these skates, and I got on the lake, and I just felt free. It was just one of the most extraordinary feelings I'd ever had. I mean, I roller skated a little bit, but this was a whole different feeling. And it happened right in the middle of New York City, right off Fifth Avenue. So there were, the buildings and everything. It was just sort of a surreal moment. And I fell in love with it. And I just wanted to learn more about it. So being good parents, they really looked into everything they could at that time. There weren't a lot of figure skaters around in New York City, let alone Chinese American born figure skaters. So it was kind of rare. But I really did do everything I could to skate. I loved it so much that I would travel to the Port Authority bus terminal after school at 4, travel an hour and a half, walk 4 blocks to a dreadful rink in West New York and skate for 2 hours and come back on the Port Authority bus and then study and, try to get ready for school the next day.
You wanted to join the Olympic team.
I did.
You didn't make the team in '68 for the French
Did not.
Olympics.
Failed, yes.
How much of a blow was it to you? Having worked, I mean, it just seems to me that everything you do, Vera, you throw yourself into 300%, and you'd thrown yourself into figure skating. How much was a blow?
And it doesn't always work out. I think that sort of the real metaphor for my life has been that some of the things I've adored the most, and by that I mean passionately loved, are not fields that I've necessarily really succeeded at. I mean, for a figure skater, particularly from a Chinese American family, education was everything. And the fact that I just wanted to skate and didn't want to go to school, that didn't really fly. So I sort of had to maintain my grades and fit skating in, somehow fit that kind of discipline in. So I did whatever I had to do it. And I think that when you don't make the team and you've given up. I mean, I used to wake up at 4 a.m. in the summer from June through August. And I would think, what are all my classmates in the Hamptons doing? They've been out and they've been partying and they're, asleep and they're going to go to a beach club for lunch and then they're going to play some tennis late in the afternoon. But by 12, I'd skate already 7 hours.
That's what you were going to do. At that stage in your life, that's what you were going to do.
And I actually honestly felt sorry for them because they were living a great life, but I was living a love. I was living a passion. And that's a very different way to live.
So when you didn't make the team in '68,
I had a nervous breakdown. I had a nervous, I also was going to Sarah Lawrence, and I went there to study drama. And I realized there weren't going to be a lot of roles for an Asian actress. And I dropped out after the first year, and I switched over to art history. And I think that for me, that was probably the real turning point in my life.
So tell me about Paris, because
Paris.
You go to Paris.
Lots of times in Paris.
And you'd been there since you were young.
Yes.
But you chose Paris. Why not Rome or London? What was it about Paris that drew you?
I think when I was very young, I went there with my parents on a holiday. And I remember my father bought me these gray patent leather shoes, little Mary Janes. And I'd seen black in New York, and I think I was about 10 or 9. And I'd never seen shoes that color in Mary Janes. And charcoal gray patent leather. And I just, my God, and it was raining. And I looked down at my shoes on the rain, and there was something so beautiful and magical about, the rain on the sidewalk. And I just said, this is such a beautiful place. And I wanted to come back. In fact, I wanted to be ambassador. There's a picture of me in front of Versailles as probably a 7 or 8-year-old with those caps we used to wear, and the double button coats and velvet collar.
And I hope your little gray Mary Janes.
And my gray Mary Janes. And I'm standing there in my little socks, and I'm saying, well, I will be an ambassador here one day. And I didn't even know what an ambassador was, but I just really fell in love with Paris.
Your mother sounds impossibly chic.
She was. It's true. I mean, a lot of people say as designers that they, worked in their mother's kitchen, or their mother inspired them, or they came to it through their mother's love of fashion. But my mother really was a clothes horse, I have to say. It's very rare to be that tall at that era. I mean, she was about 5'7", and she wore clothes so beautifully and so uniquely. The way she put clothes together, it was, I just marveled at her every day, just looking at her. And it didn't have to be dressy. Could have been just a pair of pants. There's a side here that could have been Katharine Hepburn, and there was a side here that could have been Audrey Hepburn. So she really had a sense of style that was very unique. I think it came out of the frustration of her era of not being able to work and not being able to express herself and her creativity. I do believe that. And so she did it on herself. She never had a career. She raised us, which is a career in itself, but she never had a chance to express herself artistically. She was a pianist, but not really the way she really wanted to live. I think it was impossible. We forget. I am that generation that crossed over from there to what women are capable of today. It's still not enough, but it's definitely not what I grew up around.
I think, so I get frustrated at how many barriers we still haven't gone through. There are not enough of us in senior positions, whether it's in the business world or in politics.
And ceilings.
And so many ceilings. But then I look back at my mother's generation and your mother's generation and how hard it was for them, and how much bottled up creativity and wasted talent
it must have been
was, and how frustrating
so frustrating. To the point where they were relegated to living such a limited life in terms of self-expression. And that's why I think so many of them, put hopes on their children, and they were able to transfer that to their girls or their sons. I definitely lived a life she could never have lived. That's very true. And when I think back on it, it does make me sad, because she was one of the most creative people I've ever met.
You're in Paris and you meet an editor of French Vogue, and then you come back to New York and you meet a very storied editor in New York as well.
Yes, Frances Stein.
Who said to you what when you were interested in fashion?
Well, in order to earn pocket money this summer, I was a sales assistant, and I decorated the windows at Saint Laurent. And this one woman came in and she said, I helped her, and she said, when you graduate from college, please call me. I'm going to make you an editor of Vogue. And I sort of felt like Lana Turner in LA when she's sitting on that stool in that famous ice cream parlor or whatever, and I felt discovered. I didn't even know what an editor really was. I didn't really understand. And she said, call me. So I called my mother and I said, this woman wants me to call her when I finish college next year. And my mother said, she's never going to call you. It's never going to happen. She's just being nice. And I said, okay. So when I finished Sarah Lawrence, I did call her. And she remembered me and she said, come right in. I couldn't even believe my first day at Vogue. I was in shock.
You were the youngest editor at Vogue.
I was the youngest, probably, woman to ever be given the title of editor. Yes, probably to this day. And I did that for nearly 18, almost 19 years straight.
What made you leave Vogue and go to Ralph Lauren? What was the timing there when you
I always
decided?
had a feeling that I wanted to be a designer. I felt I did not go to design school. I didn't go to FIT or Chambre Syndicale, or I didn't go to any of those places. But I had more experience with clothing firsthand than probably most students will ever have in their life. I mean, I wore it. I styled it on myself. I styled it at Vogue. And I really felt I had this dream. And my father said, if you think you can really be in fashion, prove it, get a job. So I went to Vogue. And then after a certain amount of years, I said to him, well, it's now been almost 20 years. Do you think you would back me with a company? And he said, well, not really, because you've only worked in a magazine. So why don't you try working in a fashion company? So I went to Ralph Lauren.
So after a couple of years, you leave Ralph,
Yes.
and finally your dad
I got
says,
engaged.
you
That's
got
why I
engaged?
left.
That's why you left. And your dad says, okay. Now he gives you his
Yeah,
backing.
he does. But I'm 40.
Yeah, it's not that young.
And I didn't think it was old, but I actually wasn't
I mean,
sure.
you've done your time.
I wasn't even sure I really wanted to work in fashion anymore at that point. I had very intense jobs, huge responsibility. And anyone who knows the hours. There are no hours. And also, I think when you work for those companies, it is not about you. It is about them.
So when you went to set up your own company,
Yes, I was tired.
How you were tired? You were tired, so you set
I
up a
was
global
so
empire.
tired, and I really wasn't even going to get married. And I mean, I didn't get married till I was just shy of my 40th, and I, I really wanted a family, and I think, as it turned out, I got married, and I wanted, the kids to have a family, and then looking for the wedding gown is what started this. But I never looked at a wedding gown in my life before that.
Did you have an image in your mind, even then, of, right, this is the wedding dress that Vera Wang wants for
No,
herself?
because I wasn't really even thinking of getting married. So it was really not something that occurred to me. As I went on my study, I went in Paris, I went in London, I went to see the Emanuels. I did, not them themselves, but I shopped the Emanuels, Victor Edelstein, a lot of the very big British designers at that time. And finally, I just had 2 dresses made and then another 2 by Scozzi. And I have to be really honest, I mean, my husband said to me, please don't come in fashion. Please look like a bride. Like, don't come in yogi, all right?
Don't come in black.
Don't come in black. And he said, I look at pictures, I want to make sure you look like a bride. So that's who really influenced me, my choice. I mean, it was fine. It was very bridal. But I did change. I got to change, because in Chinese culture, you change from the Western dress to Chinese dress, but I changed into a party dress for afterwards. I actually started a trend way back in 1989 to change.
When you started your business, did you have a concept of what a Vera Wang wedding dress was going to
No,
look
none
like?
whatsoever. I mean, I have to be honest, my father recognized the market. When he saw that it was underserved, he said, you should do bridal because you do fashion. And I said, oh, I don't know. And he said, no, you should do it. There's very little fabric inventory. There's very little inventory, period, because you don't keep dresses in every size. And he said it's limited and it's controllable. And from a financial point of view, it doesn't require an enormous initial investment. He was a businessman. And I said, but I don't know if I want to do this. And he said, well, you need some more freedom for your life. You've had no freedom your whole life. And then when I started my business, I really wasn't free.
No, that's...
After that, I mean, it made everything else look like a vacay. Pretty much.
That was a weird idea
And
of
I can
freedom.
say that, you know, I had pretty intense jobs. Both jobs were intense. And then from there, just, I don't know, we opened the store, and my first client was Ethel Kennedy. I mean, her son Max was getting married and marrying a beautiful girl who was a law student. And I spent 8 months on that dress. And within 10 minutes of the ceremony, she was out kicking a football with the Kennedy brothers because they love to play football. I said, what do we work on the dress? The flowers at the bottom of this dress is covered in grass stains. I mean, it was crazy, but among my biggest first clients were the Kennedys.
You've done so much and you're still doing so much. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I kind of felt like I was always in a rush. I thought, I don't know, I had this idea that life was going to stop at 50 or something, or my work was going to stop at 50. Or 40 even. I just thought I didn't have a very long runway. You've proved that the runway for women is so long and you can keep evolving and keep doing new things. And do you think, would you say to younger women today that they have time, that they can do?
I do
I don't know what
think
that
that.
message is for younger women,
No, I
but there's
do think, but
something for
also,
younger
in all
women there.
fairness to you, what you said was true. Women were considered transparent at a certain age, even in terms of their careers. I mean, you'll age out of a career. I don't just mean modeling. I don't just mean being an editor. My father said, choose a career where you don't feel old by 25. He actually wanted me to go to law school. And you gain more respect. And you're not fighting time. You're gaining respect. And the more years you put in, the more respect you're going to generate. And that sort of stayed with me, but I did not grow up in a youth-obsessed culture. If you were born in 1949 like me, it was 4 years after World War II ended in Europe. I mean, 1945, I was born in 1949. I mean, the French, the British, everybody's obsessed with World War II. All the films are about World War II. And I think that the fact I wasn't obsessed by it because I was busy and I felt productive and I loved what I was doing, you don't focus on that as much. And we didn't have social media, and everybody didn't age right before your very eyes, and everybody wasn't critical. It was really more about finding your way, what you wanted to do, whether you wanted to be the best parent that ever lived, the best brown bag lunches, the best cupcakes, the best library drive, the best security patrol. I mean, you didn't, whatever life you chose, I didn't see that obsession with aging that I have felt the last 2 decades. And I see in people that are so young, which is what is shocking to me. I have never dressed to try to be young. I've dressed in my own style since I was an editor. And people who know me that long know that I've always been experimental. I've always mixed athleisure when it wasn't even athleisure. I mixed leggings with, you know, a Kenzo shearling jacket with an Agnes B t-shirt. I mean, I always was a stylist, basically. And I think that I don't feel, however I am now, that I should stop being creative in how I dress myself, but also what I create for others. I just feel it's not about age, it's about style. And that's always how I felt. I never not felt that way. And I just see that whatever you choose to be, if it works out for your lifestyle, it's relevant and it's valid. Not everyone wears the same clothes because they don't live the same lifestyle.
Do you think it's something that when you talk to young designers in their 20s and early 30s,
Yes.
do you think it's something they appreciate?
I don't know if it's that they're thinking of. I think it's so competitive, and I think they're just trying to somehow be noticed, that whatever they create, that someone cares, that they can find their audience or people that believe in them. I mean, it was a smaller industry before, and now it's global. and now it's everywhere, and now it's on a phone, and much more accessibility than there was. But at the same time, it's much harder for young designers because they don't have that limitation. They're competing against so many other, visions and ideas and countries and cultures and everything else. There are extraordinary talents coming out of China, Australia. It isn't just Paris, Milan, New York, and London. It isn't. It's LA. LA is an insane culture. I think LA is the best jeans businesses in the world because that's so LA. So lifestyle has a lot to do with how you dress. You would look absurd in some things that you wear in New York and LA. You would feel ridiculous in the Hamptons in something that doesn't fit into a Hamptons lifestyle. So geography, temperature, climate, lifestyle, they all have something to do with fashion. To me, I'm not running around like this in, the Hamptons.
You'd look fantastic.
I don't know if I look fantastic, but this would not be, it'd be more shorts and a clog or something, t-shirts, a great sweater, that kind of thing. I think fashion is so specific, and I think it's also so large. It's so big now. There's so many ways of looking at fashion and beauty and style and lifestyle and everything. And I think it's a great thing. It probably also can cause some confusion for people, but even someone as vetted, or let's just say as old as me, I will sometimes buy things in London I would never wear in New York. And I used to make that mistake. I'd buy something in Paris. I'd say, God, am I really running around in Kenzo royal blue leather coat in the Vogue offices? But that's part of the international quality of fashion, that when you're there, you're influenced by where you are. If you're in Paris, you're feeling something different than London. If you're in London, you're feeling something different than Shanghai. If you're in Shanghai, you're feeling something different from Hong Kong. On Miami, LA, you're influenced by your environment. And I think that's something that's very much a factor in fashion today.
Vera Wang, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.